Okay, so welcome to our launch for the Sustain Feasibility Call number 3, so our third shot at this. Hopefully you're all raring to go and to hear about the opportunity that we're putting forward today. In terms of, before we sort of launch into the slides and everybody hopefully doesn't fall asleep, I just wanted to say a couple of things about how to keep up with what we're doing here. So we're going to be recording today's session. That's just for the purposes of the presentation, and that's because we'll use the recording and then publish it probably by the end of the week, just to allow people to be able to review this if they weren't able to attend, or if you missed some things in the session that you'd like to review again. And we'll also be circulating the slides that we're presenting today in PDF form, along with the recording of that presentation as well. We really do want to encourage questions on the call, because you have us here now to grill us and ask us any difficult questions about what we're trying to achieve here and how you can interact with that and get involved and hopefully put in some high quality applications. If you do have any questions, you can either hold on to them and unmute towards the end of the session, or by all means drop them into the chat as we're going through. And Becky and the team here, I think, will be ready to jump on those and ask some questions of us all here. Don't worry, as we get to the back end of this, once we've completed the presentation this morning, we will be returning the recording off, so that there shouldn't be any reason to worry about your questions being broadcast to the masses, along with the rest of the recordings as well. So it will just be the presentation that we'll be publishing on the website at the end. Okay, so we should have all of that information up by the end of the week. So if you find yourself struggling to keep up or write notes or anything like that, then don't worry too much about that, and hopefully sit back and enjoy the ride. It's online meeting, so the emergency exits are here, here, and here. I'm sure you all know where your bathroom is, so there shouldn't be any dire situations. Becky, can we launch the slides and then we'll get going? Okay, so in the interest of trying to appear somewhat professional for at least some portion of this webinar, I'll try to talk through the third feasibility call that we're running here at Sustain. It's important for me to provide a little bit of an introduction to Sustain for any of you on the call who may not be familiar with what it is. You may have even heard the name or heard that we're doing something around the sustainability of steel, but not necessarily the details and what's driving us to do these things and how we started and all that sort of stuff. So I'll provide a little bit of the context for that, and finishing up with a reminder of what we funded in this area in the past. And we have a previous recipient of one of our awards who'll be talking about what they did and what it meant to them, just to give you an idea of what you're getting yourselves into. After that, I'll just return to talk a little bit about the scope, why we're focusing on the things that we are, and present a little bit of an overview about that. And then I'll be handing over to Sarah to talk through the details of the application process, how we go through the assessment and all of those sorts of things. And then I think Becky will be talking then right at the end about a couple of the other opportunities that will be coming down the line as well, just to make sure everybody's up to speed with the funding opportunities coming through this hub before 2026. Okay, so next slide, please. Oh, I've got a clicker, even better. Okay, so why Sustain? So this program really started its journey in about 2017. I'm not going to give too much of a history lesson, but people might remember that around that sort of time, the steel industry had fragmented from a limited number of large companies to a much larger number of small companies. And that kind of meant that a lot of the research base, particularly from the commercial perspective, but also in terms of that critical mass that existed supporting the sector in the UK, kind of diversified a little bit. And one of the main objectives of Sustain was to try and unite all of these different companies behind a unified research agenda to support the future of the UK industry, and particularly in regards to sustainability, which, surprisingly enough, even back in 2017, which doesn't seem like that long ago, wasn't necessarily the number one thing on everybody's mind at the time, how things had changed. Sustain was developed as a technology-focused program, so it's primarily looking at the development of technologies to deliver a green steel transition. We'll talk a little bit about the detail of that a little bit later on. And we're heavily focused on co-creation and engagement, both with the industrial base within the country. So, we co-created the entire research program in partnership with industry and have continued to refine and redirect it in that way as we go through as well. But we've also taken a strong steer from the wider academic community, both the one that existed within Sustain when we started and the one that we built through the development of the feasibility study, similar to the one that we're launching today, but also through engagement with other people who aren't necessarily directly involved in the hub as well. So we're a very open and cooperative hub, and we're very keen always to be challenged on what we're doing and to take on the best ideas from people, whether or not they're currently involved or not. And the feasibility studies are quite an important component of that in terms of delivering successful outcomes for the hub. And we try to be as flexible and responsive in our operation as we possibly can, moving with the times, and the times are changing exceptionally fast in the area of net zero, so we kind of have to do that. So we're driven by sort of three key pillars. We have visions around delivering academic leadership for steel and maintaining that critical mass and interest in the sector, and these feasibility studies are an important part of that. We want to deliver the priorities for a 21st century workforce, particularly in the skills area, not so much in the delivery of skills particularly, but working with those delivery partners to ensure that we've got a nice pipeline of what we think the key skills are going to be to support the technologies of the future. And we have two key pillars that underpin our grand challenges for this hub around carbon neutrality and zero waste, and smart processes for smart products. It's fair to say in the past we've focused a lot more on the carbon neutrality and zero waste, and as we move towards the back end of the hub we're much more interested in the product focus, which is why we have the scope for this feasibility study call that we do. That drives some ambitions. We want to be internationally leading in research and scale up by 2030 within the UK and in the steel domain. We want to deliver a productivity boost at implementation stage for some of the technologies that we're developing. We want to deliver carbon neutral steelmaking in the UK by 2040 and double the steel GVA by 2030. So these are very ambitious plans, but it's something that we're committed to try and deliver. And then in terms of the values that we use or that we adhere to try and deliver all of these things, we're very collaborative, I've already mentioned, and very keen to foster open innovation and an interaction with new partners as far as we possibly can. It's about enabling people to be successful in this sector, not hoovering up ideas or saying that we're God's gift to steel. It really is about trying to get the best out of the whole academic community and try to encourage people to use their brain power to solve this problem in the UK. We're committed to responsible innovation and career development, and there's a lot of work that we've done supporting early career researchers, and there'll be a little bit more about that right at the end of this presentation. We want to have steelmaking that's fit for a healthy and resilient nation, so that's both about the supply chain issues that exist, particularly post-Brexit, but also about ensuring that that is something that sits well within communities from an environmental perspective. And crucially for this particular call, we are interested in the customer focus and supply chain integration. So that's much more about what does a green steel industry within the UK mean for the people who need to use the steel, and that's everybody from the obvious customers and OEMs who might be buying sheets of steel to press them or bars to generate different products, but also about what these products would mean to the wider society as well, and how it can enable a successful green steel transition for them. And that's a core pillar that we're looking to support through this call. So hopefully that you can sort of see where all of these sorts of things sit. This is a very busy slide, which I'm not going to dwell on, but they will be circulated afterwards, so you don't have to absorb all of the detail here. The only things I really want to get across here is that we have these two grand challenges, one in carbon neutral iron and steel making and one in smart steel processing. They feed an agenda driven and co-created by industry that's delivered via Swansea, which is the hub here, and two initial spokes, which were developed at the time of the proposal, at Sheffield and WMG, but I'm really keen to stress that since then we've engaged with a lot of different academic partners in the UK and funded a lot of work outside of that network, run a lot of events where we try to bring the community together. There's another one, quick plug, starting on the 10th of July here in Swansea, which we'd really recommend any of you come along to. And the idea behind that whole process was that we wanted to deliver some information on not just the new technologies of the future for the green steel transition, but also about how we can inform investment back into the sector. And you would have seen probably that there now some of that investment is starting to be realised for some of the companies in the UK. There is actually an unprecedented amount of investment going into the sector. Some of which is actually somewhat under the radar in the UK at the moment. So it's a very exciting time where we're actually seeing some of the outputs of this hub being realised at the industrial scale. So just going to quickly zip through our research themes. We have 5 themes that underpin those 2 grand challenges that I mentioned earlier on. They are emissions management and utilisation. So that's around what comes out of the stacks and how can we make best use of it or minimize it in the first place, of course, as well. Zero waste steel making, so that's a resource efficiency agenda, both in terms of the materials that come out of the primary side of the business, so the ore-based processing, but increasingly obviously to do with anthropogenic sources of steel and how we manage that, the scrap cycle as it's more commonly known. There's a key pillar in the middle there, which is around data-driven innovation, which we kind of use as an enabling technology across all of the different themes. We want to deliver processes that have smart, low energy production, and we want new processes for new products. To give you an idea of the latest arrangement of the core research program as it currently exists, this is kind of the tasks that we have sat under our core research program, which is delivered at Swansea, Warwick, and Sheffield. And you can see here kind of how these things break down. So there's some work on CO2 utilisation towards the left-hand side. There's some digitally driven work in the scrap supply chain and digital descriptions of the process in the middle. And then there's work on reducing the energy demand of our existing footprint of the processes and optimization of alloy design for sustainable metallurgy towards the right-hand side. So the thing that you're probably noticing about all of the things that I've said so far is that it is really necessarily, because of the size of the challenge, so far been about the steel industry solving its own problems in the area of decarbonisation through a technology focus. We recognise the importance and the requirement to look beyond that and say, what does this mean for the people who use steel? And that is the focus of this call that we have running forward. So why join the hub? Well, hopefully you'd find that we are very supportive and nice and exciting people to work with. We can provide quite a lot of support in terms of industrial engagement with the sector to help you realise what may be at the moment quite academically driven ideas that you have of how you might be able to transform the industry. We have the ability to use the outputs of your research to impact on policy. We've got very strong links with different government departments and policy influence through NGOs and things like that as well. You can have access to some of the facilities that exist within the existing partners. And there is the potential to access flex and follow-on funding, particularly where you're interested in trying to implement anything that might have come out of your feasibility studies. So and then the value to us, the reciprocal part of that, is that your new ideas really complement and enhance the hub, and that's something that I'm very keen to support as we go through the hub's lifetime. To give you an idea of some of the things that we've previously funded, so we had some work on sensors that was completed by Durham University, where they produced some really interesting simulations that demonstrated the potential to generate very, very high temperature stable sensors, which is important for the steel industry. At UCL, UCAN did a really interesting piece of work modelling the furnace, reheat furnaces, and what new fuels may be used to fire those in a more environmentally sustainable way. And Julian did some excellent work on looking at new sources of solid carbon into the process, which is actually essential whether or not you're looking at a recycling route or not, in case you weren't aware. And that all of those things have actually resulted in further investment down the line. That was our first call, and then more recently we had some work funded at the University of Hull looking at the development of potential catalysts to from steel making byproducts to convert CO2. And a really exciting and interesting project by Dr. Wei Zhu at Cardiff University, looking at how they modelled the steel making process to reduce the energy demand, and particularly in the context of a renewable energy system. So I think this is where I would hand over, rather than you just take it from me, I would hand over to Wei Zhu, and he can talk to you a little bit about briefly what he did, but perhaps more importantly, what it meant to him and how it helped him to, or how we were able to help him to progress his research ambition.
Okay, thank you very much, Cam. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. And yes, as introduced by Cam, I'm Yuezhou from Cardiff University, and our team was founded by the second feasibility study call in summer 2022. And we are looking at the smart and flexible operation of steelmaking plants in the background of facilitating the net zero transition of both the electricity sector as well as the steel making sector. And I would like to say that it is really a very beneficial piece of experience for me. And this feasibility study really helped me establish and further develop my research career related to steel making domain. I think there are many three major good things for sustained feasibility study project. The first one is, of course, the funding. It will provide a good starting resources for some research, especially for ECR like me that time. And also, for that time, I think it was around 50K. But if I'm right, I heard that this time it has been increased to 100K. I think it will be really good, a good resource for starting. And also, not only just a project itself, very importantly, to help me open the door to the wider research and industrial community in the UK, where we can, we are linked to a lot of excellent researchers in this area, and also many industrial partners in the whole supply chain of steel in the UK. And also, I would like to say that this project really sustains very long beyond the project lifetime itself, because actually my small project ended early last year, but until now I still keep attending. I am engaged by the sustained community in all types of meetings, opportunities. So it's really good opportunity to be involved in the whole community. And also, as mentioned by Cam, last but not least, the whole community is very supportive and nice, I would say. And I really feel very supported here, and very warm community. And all in all, I think it is really a wonderful opportunity. So don't hesitate to apply. And when I applied that time, it was very close to deadline already, and I knew very little about steel making research community, and I didn't know what to do. But at that time, the whole team was really supportive and can help me link with Liberty Steel, which was the industrial partner in the project, just within a few days. So don't be afraid. If you have any good idea, if you have passion in steel making research, and do apply for this feasibility study project. So that's the experience I would like to share. Thank you very much. I'll give it back to Cam.
Thank you very much. That might sound somewhat staged, but I really appreciate that, and it's nice to hear that you had a good experience. I should probably just say to anybody who wasn't on we had a webinar that we ran about a month ago or something like that, I think it was, and you gave a presentation where we just asked you to talk about the technical details of your project, but you gave that a very similar sort of reflection on the process itself, and I thought that was really nice to hear. And thank you very much for relaying that here, because I think it's an important thing for the applicants to understand about the way that we work, but also the wider benefits beyond simply conducting a piece of research. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking in a minute because I'm sure you're all bored stiff. But just a couple of things to cover at a very high level. There's much more information and detail in the call document itself as to the scope of this project, but I just want to give a very high level steer as to the sorts of things that we're looking for here. So I think you've probably seen or taken in as I've gone through the presentation of the early stages of the work that we did within the hub and how things have progressed, that up until now we've been focused primarily on these grand challenge areas here, and the focus of the output of those works has been the developing technologies which we can use to implement decarbonisation solutions for the industry or for the producers of steel themselves. We recognise it's important to, as we get to the later stages of this hub, to realise those benefits for the customers and think more about the use and the downstream, I would say, life cycle of steel products. And so this is where this call differentiates itself slightly from not only our previous feasibility calls, but also to a significant degree a lot of the core research that we funded through the hub as well. Okay, so this fits much more under the Grand Challenge Research Area 2 Smart Steel Processing area. In terms of the scope of the call, of course, we never pin down anything absolutely in terms of the scope, because there could always be a really exciting and transformative idea to come through, but we are guiding people more towards what will happen in terms of the use of the steel products. So I'm going to outline 4 broad areas here, but there's more detail and some examples of the sorts of things that we might be looking for in the call document itself. So I guess the first thing to point out in the top sentence is that we'll accept any high quality novel proposals, but related to the production and use in particular in the UK. So that's important. So we are looking at UK partners for this thing because this is UK Research Council funding and centred around the benefits of decarbonisation. And then the 4 areas at a high level are, we're looking at opportunities to drive the business case for green steel making. So the technologies, I think a lot of the technologies have been developed through the hub, but we also need to make sure that they're holistically sustainable, and that means understanding the impact of perhaps higher capital expenditure and the opportunities for circularity that disrupts the conventional steel making model, which does rely to a significant extent on producing material at high volumes, generally at relatively low margins and a single point of sale. It might be that we have to disrupt that model, but those are the sorts of things that have to be tested. So we're interested in what the financial business modeling opportunities might be to deliver a disruptive business model or solution for green steel making, with a particular view on circularity through the whole life cycle of steel products. We're interested in a value-intensive design philosophy. So we need to consider where these materials are going to end up at the end of their life. Let's not just assume that they all end up in a large amount of mixed scrap, but what could we do at the design stage for some of these products that use a large amount of steel to ensure that they are more effectively dealt with either at the end of their life or a given second or third lives as well. So how can we design products in a way that enables us to do that more effectively? We need to design out a lot of the problems that we're currently facing with regards to circular steel making. Where we have things already in circulation, we also need to consider how are we going to reuse some of those products and remanufacture those products, because an awful lot of work has been done by the steel industry itself on how we can effectively recycle that material and do that with the lowest environmental impact. But that is one of the widest vectors of the circular economy. So what can we do on reuse, remanufacture and life extension for those steel products? And then a kind of a catch-all towards the end there, any other novel decarbonisation or recycling projects that might produce a step change in the path to net zero, but particularly in partnership with people who use steel products, okay? So if you've got any other ideas, don't feel pigeonholed by these things, but again, focus on the fact that we are looking more at how we can harness and deliver maximum opportunities for the people who use steel as much as the people who produce steel. Obviously, we want that to happen in partnership with the producers, and that's important to us, but the focus of the research should be delivering those benefits for those downstream users of the steel products. So thankfully for me, because I've only just recovered from COVID, and probably for all of you because you're getting bored, I now hand over to Sarah to discuss the details of the application process and how you can get involved.
Okay, so on our next slide, we can see, right, so we aim to provide at least 3 awards for the third call, up to the value of £100,000 each. So this will be 80% FEC. So your university will provide the usual 20%, as with most awards. And the projects that you are applying for need to be completed by April 26. And this is quite important because we only have a limited time available on Sustain. So we'll go through the timelines with you later. So just for you to know, exceptional proposals may qualify for a higher level of funding, which will also depend upon the research quality, the strength and the number of proposed research outputs and the overall contribution to the fundamental grand challenges. The funding is available for novel research, as previously explained by Cam. And we would also recommend proposals that address the utilisation of steel and they generate new business models and or supply chain solutions. So as stated there as well, the call is open to all UK academics whose institutions are not currently involved with Sustain and they're eligible to receive EPSRC funding. Existing previously awarded applicants can also apply, provided that's a significantly different area of research. So next slide. So here we can see the process. So the call opens today. I think you've been given a link in the chat to access the guidance and the application form. And what you can see there, you can either apply directly straight away, or we recommend that you go through our process where you can have sandpit sessions, which Becky will go through later, where you can speak to our industry partners directly. And you can also have 20-minute surgery sessions with Cameron to talk through your ideas. And this is recommended to give you a good steer on your research idea to help you with that. You can submit the applications on the 23rd of September by 9 AM. And we have a robust process there where we will monitor that everything's okay on the applications, get back to you with any queries. We have a panel meeting arranged for November where we have specialists, academics marking the applications, and we'll go through all of that. And then the awards will be given in November. And again, just to reiterate as well, we have that year gap between January and December the following year and up to March, so the applications are finished. So the research is finished by March 26. And I'll hand you over to Becky to talk about the sandpit sessions.
Brilliant, thanks Sarah. Just to say that Ellie's just put a link in the chat to the core webpage that we've got up at the moment. And again, we'll circulate that, all the email addresses and everything you need after the session. So we're going to run 2 versions of sandpits for this call. So we're going to hold some in-person sandpits as part of our biannual conference, which will be happening from the 8th to the 10th of July at Swansea University. The conference will be a good opportunity to meet lots of other people from both the academic and industrial communities from across the UK and beyond. So it'll be a good event to attend, potentially make connections, network and work with other people to develop proposals. The sandpit sessions as part of that conference will be on the 2nd day, on Tuesday the 9th of July in the afternoon. So that's the in-person sandpits, which we really would encourage that you attend to get that face-to-face interaction. We're also planning to host some sandpit sessions online as well. This won't be a live call like today. We're going to look at getting involvement of some of our academics and industrial partners to have an appointment-based online system over a week in July. We're just confirming the dates at the moment, where you'll be able to book short meetings with various partners to discuss ideas and see if any connections can be made if you can't make it to our in-person sandpits events. We'll make sure that there are opportunities, especially at the in-person events, there'll be opportunities to speak to us in the operations team, but we're always available over email as well, and that email is on the bottom of the screen there, and we'll use that email address to share all the information after this meeting today. Following the sandpits, which we are going to make quite short meetings, we're encouraging applicants to kind of share their details to organise further meetings with either industrial representatives, people within Sustain, to flesh out their ideas and develop their proposals. Perhaps you're interested in some of the equipment we might have as well, and some of those meetings will give you the opportunity to see the kind of things that we can offer already within the hub. Just a few useful links. This will be probably more useful when you get the slides in an email, but just so that it's all there within the document, the QR code on there will take you to the same place as the link that Ellie sent in the chat. And just so you've got specific links to the guidance document and application form. Both of those are available on that web page as well, but just in case you're struggling to find that, we've included the links on here. The application form is in Word document form, so it should be easily editable, but if there are any issues with accessing either of those, please do let us know and we can get different copies sent around. Sarah.
Okay, yeah, so this is just a table of the key dates that you need to be aware of. Obviously today we're launching the call and the call is open. We have, as previously mentioned, surgery sessions with Cameron, 20-minute sessions they are for you to speak to him on a one-to-one basis. And we have the general times there, but what we'll be doing is you can access 20-minute sessions via our email and Ronnie will set that up for you at a suitable time. The sandpits then, as Becky's just mentioned, the dates 9th of July, and for our biannual conference they'll be there, and we also have the Zoom sessions for those. Closing date, important one for you, 23rd of September at 9 AM, so that's the time that we'll start processing all the applications. We'll have an evaluation sessions going on with our panel members from mid-October. And as we mentioned previously, mid-November will be the panel meeting. Just to reiterate again that if it's a 12-month application that you're successful with, it needs to be completed by March 26. And any queries, obviously, please go to the info at Sustain, but we're here to help you with absolutely anything. No question is too silly or small. And financials as well. We haven't touched on that through this presentation, but if you do have any questions at all, please get in touch. Next slide. Additional Sustain calls. So we have a few other calls going on as well at the moment. We have a current rolling call for our Technology Translation Fund, which gives you 20,000 for each award, and it's open all the time. And there's no timeline, but we do obviously have the end date of Sustain to bear in mind. And Early Career Research Call 4, that's our next big call, which we'll be launching in the autumn, probably September. And again, that will be a research call that the awards will be announced in January, and then they can do the work, you can do the research work within the next year for that call. And we have a new call called the Enabling Fund, which is opening soon. The guidance is nearly complete. We have 10K available for each award. It's basically for you to explore any ideas that you may have that may be able to be going into a feasibility study, I believe. That's more the,
do you want me to
yes,
build
please.
on that a little bit? It's just got, I mean, we like to try new things and be a little bit creative with the way that we're using the funding. So this Enabling Fund, which we'll be announcing soon, it's obviously a relatively small amount of money, but it is supposed to be quite a dynamic and rapid award process. So we're not running panels for this in the same way that we would if we were running much larger things. But the idea about this is for you to be able to produce something which would be shared around areas that you think that people should be focusing on. When I say people, I mean the whole community across the UK. So that's obviously important for us to guide, what, areas of research that we're not necessarily thinking about that could be kind of out there at left field, but things that we should be concentrating on to try and help deliver sustainability for the steel sector. And the idea is that we give you 10K to be able to pull together like a short white paper, or it could be a presentation, or you could generate a video that sort of explains why this is important. And then we will use our network to disseminate that. Now, if you're interested in applying for this call, there's nothing stopping you from applying for the Enabling Fund as well. I appreciate there's nothing at the moment in the public domain that gives you the details behind this, but the broad principles are the same. And you could use that to sort of say, look, this is an important area, and then of course simultaneously be working on a proposal that sits within that area. So this is not an invitation, just in case anybody's wondering, for you to give away your best intellectual property. Ideas are the currency of academia, right? So it's not about you saying give away your best idea, but just sort of saying, when you get those students who sat there and you're like, why is nobody working on this? Or as a broad area, why are people not focusing on this enough? The idea is that you can use this very small fund to just pull together a pitch that says, come on people, do something in this area. And that's something that we can use to spark some interest in the wider community, but also potentially something that we can take to the funding stakeholders and stuff that we interact with. We have that privilege, but we also want to use it for the benefit of the wider community to try and say, look, it would be good to drive some additional support for research in these areas. So that's the idea of it. It's really a pump priming activity. We would be anticipating that we would be awarding these in advance of the closure of the feasibility call as well. But that's quite a rapid turnaround decision-making process with a relatively small internal panel. So if you're interested in that, I know it's a little bit different, then please go ahead. The only other thing that I wanted to add was on the early career researcher call. So, I mean, this is one of the things that I'm most proud of within Sustain, to be honest, and a really good opportunity to support people who would otherwise not be eligible to receive EPSRC funding as a sort of a launch pad for their career. So these are people not in academic positions, but researchers normally on short-term contracts who would have the ability to develop their own research idea, manage their own funding, and have something there that they can launch a future career in academia off as well. So more to come on these three as we go along.